welcome to this week's Ask a Reporter.
Hey.
This is Ruby.
Hey everyone.
And I'm Sarah. I'm actually standing in for Nathan this week, so they've told me what to do. Hopefully I'll do an okay job.
I'm sure you will. It'll go smoothly.
We're going to talk about the threatened species story, aren't we?
That's right. Yep, it's me back again this week, and we're going to talk about threatened species because last week was National Threatened Species Day or week, was it?
Mm-hmm.
And we did a story called, about a documentary called Rangers on the Front Line, and this was about rangers in Cambodia whose job it is to protect Cambodian forests from poachers and loggers. You can see some vision there on the screen now, and it's a really dangerous job, but they do it because they love their forests, and they work hard. They don't get paid very much, but they do a great job, and they're doing it in an effort to save the animals and the beautiful trees in Cambodia.
Now, if you have any questions about the story that you want Ruby to answer, you can send them in via Twitter and we'll do our best to answer them.
Hashtag Ask a Reporter.
All right, well, we've got a few. Shall we have a look?
Let's dive into it.
All right, well, first of all, Mia from Marion Public School wants to know why they're doing it.
Right, so why the rangers have the job that they have is because of people called poachers and loggers. So poachers are people who illegally shoot animals and sell them often on the black market, which is basically selling them illegally, and they'll sell their body parts over the border where they can get a lot of money for them. And illegal loggers do a similar thing, except it's with trees rather than animals. So they'll cut down trees, and the wood is really valuable. That's part of the trees that they cut down, and they sell it often to China from Cambodia, and people will buy that wood for a lot of money, and so the poachers and loggers make heaps of money from it. So you just have these massive declines in animal populations and in the number of trees there. So that's where the rangers come in. They've come in and said, look, this is enough. We have to stop this happening, or else we're going to lose our ecosystem. And so that's why they do what they do.
And why are they hunting the animals that they're hunting? That's a question from Jessie from Darling Primary School.
It's a good question. Well, the kinds of animals that get hunted are things like leopards, elk, deer, tigers, and in fact, like the tiger has become extinct in Cambodia because of people shooting it. The reason is that these animals are considered valuable for lots of different reasons. One of the interesting reasons is that a lot of cultures believe that these animals using their body parts in medicine can actually cure you of certain illnesses and sicknesses, but there's actually no scientific evidence to show that that is true. So a lot of people still believe it, and they still want to get these animal parts to use in medicine, even though the science doesn't back that up.
Well, I have a question about tigers, actually. Lachlan from Epping Heights Public School wants to know, what species of tiger did they have in Cambodia before they went extinct, which is an excellent question.
It is, and I had to research the answer to this question because I wasn't sure myself. But the answer is Indo-Chinese tiger. And they're extinct in Cambodia. They're not completely extinct worldwide, but they are extinct in Cambodia.
So do you know, sorry, I shouldn't ask questions, but do you know where else they live?
In Indochina. So Indochina is actually the name of a region in Asia, and so I imagine that the tiger probably lives in other countries in the Indochina region. That's my cheeky answer.
Let's find some questions from you guys instead. Let's have a look at a question from Paige,
Paige,
who goes to Atwell Primary School, and she asks, apart from rangers, who else looks after the animals and the land and the forest?
Well, basically nobody, and that's why we need the rangers. Especially in Cambodia. I mean, people, you've got the poachers and loggers out there who are destroying it, and everyone else kind of, you have lots of tourists coming through to see the beautiful landscape and stuff, but they don't, they come and they visit and then they go back home. So there's not many people there that are, guarding what's left, and that's why the rangers are so important.
Great. Now, let's have a look what else we've got. Here's a question from James, who goes to Peacoast Public. He wants to know why do people have motorcycles instead of other vehicles?
Yeah, they
Interesting
are.
question.
They are all on motorbikes, aren't they? The answer to that one is, I guess, just practicality. It's a really easy way to get around on a motorbike, and motorbikes are pretty cheap. They're easier to fix than cars. I mean, they do have cars as well, and they have, trucks and utes that they drive around. But when it comes to getting through the forest itself,
yeah, you can get through the trees and things, right? You don't need as big a roads on a motorbike.
yeah, you can wind your way through the forest much more easily. But they are pretty noisy, and that's why they have to be careful, because often they want to be quiet because they want to kind of ambush people. They want to sneak up on the poachers so that they don't know that they're coming. So often they'll get off their motorbikes and go in on foot so that they can be quieter.
Huh. There you go. How about this question from Violetta, who goes to spring school?
Hey, Violetta.
Violetta wants to know how much money the Rangers get.
Yeah, good question. This wasn't covered in the original documentary because I had to watch the whole documentary before I made our little BTN story, and they didn't mention that, but I did look it up online, and I was reading figures that were about ranging from about $30 a month to $100 a month. And when you think
it's not very much, is it?
it's not very much, and that's in Australian dollars, so converting it. But it's, when you think of, so that's kind of what I guess a normal Australian adult would make in a day is about $100.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, they're not getting paid much at all.
It's like $25 a week at the most.
And it's barely enough, I think, for the Rangers to support their families, and so they're not doing it because it's a flashy job with good pay. They're doing it, because partly because it's hard to get a job in those areas in Cambodia anyway. So for some of them, it really is one of their only options. But I think a lot of them are really passionate as well about protecting their natural environment.
It's just as well they are. Now let's have a look what else we have. How about a question from India, who goes to Balgowlah Heights Public School? Balgowlah
in Sydney.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not from Sydney. Sorry, Balgowlah. Hi, Balgowlah. India wants to know, why do people find animal skin valuable?
I guess that's a really good question, because it doesn't really have a good answer, I don't think.
No, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about something like leather, we use leather for heaps of stuff, and that's animal skin, that's cow skin. And we like it because of a lot of qualities it has. It's good quality, and it'll last for a long time, and it keeps you warm and things like that, which is true for a lot of the animal skins, but some of them, it's just kind of more of a show. It's more like, it's kind of like having diamonds or gold. Like, it doesn't have any specific value, just to have it, and to, if you can hang a tiger skin in your house or something like that, it's seen to be, I don't know, like...
I think because they are rare, I think that's why some people value it, is because, not many people have it, and of course,
and anything that's rare is going to be, anything that's harder to get is going to be worth more when you actually get it.
It's similar with like ivory and things like that. It's rare because it's hard to get.
Yeah, and there's definitely kind of, I would say, a movement worldwide sort of against things like this, because of the damage that it's doing to these animal populations and to the environment. So things like ivory, like elephant tusks, things made of ivory are very valuable, but there are also heaps of people who are saying, we don't want people to cut the tusks off elephants anymore, so we're going to destroy this ivory, which is what they do in some parts of the world when they find it. They confiscate it and they destroy it to kind of show we don't support this happening. And people are the same with animal skins, like tiger skins and furs. People think that it's not right, to manufacture it like that, and so a lot of people don't buy stuff like that. But there are still lots of people who find it valuable and want to get their hands on it.
Do you know how many rangers there are? That's a question that McKenna asked.
Oh, that's a great question, and I should know the answer to that.
But
I'm not sure. I would
we'll
say...
have to go for a trip to Cambodia to find out.
We'll have to go meet them. In the videos that I was watching, it was a big group. It was probably 50 or so, but I would say, Cambodia is not a huge country, but I would say there would be hundreds probably. But yeah, I'm not sure. There are far more poachers and loggers than there are rangers. They're really outnumbered. But yeah, that's just kind of the nature of it, unfortunately.
Here's a good question. This is from Michaela. She wants to know what other countries have issues with poachers.
Oh, that is a great question.
Yeah, because there's lots of them, aren't there?
There are.
Yeah, even Australia, some poaching happens. And because poaching can be any animal. It's just taking an animal illegally, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It happens all over the place. And, you know, places like Africa, it's a really big problem. We often hear about, you know, those exotic animals over there, like elephants, being poached, being killed illegally and taken. But yeah, it happens everywhere. It does happen in Australia, and it's really widespread. And there are some countries that have many more resources to manage that and to enforce it and to, you know, arrest the people who are responsible. But then countries like Cambodia, they're not rich countries, and it's not as easy for them to prevent this illegal activity happening. So it's great to see like somewhere in Cambodia where the people are actually, you know, mobilizing and doing something about it, even when, you know, they might not have as many resources as other countries.
I think you've just about answered that question. That was a question that Jay just asked, which is why is it hard to catch poachers? But yeah, exactly what you said.
That's what it is. It's resources, and poachers are really sneaky. They're kind of like they're criminals, and so their whole livelihood is built on this illegal activity, and so they're really careful not to get caught. Actually, in the documentary, when I watched it, there was these amazing scenes watching the rangers arriving at someone's house or someone's business and raiding it because they've heard that, you know, a poacher has taken an animal there and is keeping it there. And then when they raid the house, they don't find anything. They don't find any poachers, any people there. They don't find any animals there. And, you know, obviously they've heard that the rangers are coming and just been able to clear everything out really quickly. So they can be hard to catch, but you know, a lot of them do get arrested. They do get found and arrested.
Now, I've got an interesting question here from Thomas, who goes to Crown Bornese Primary School. He wants to know, is it similar to whales being hunted in Australia?
Not really. It's actually a very different story with whales, but whales are a really interesting one. I guess how we understand, gosh, where to start with whaling? Basically, it's...
Because there's not really like individual poachers with whales, is it? Because I mean, it's pretty hard to catch a whale.
Hard to shoot a whale and put it on the back of your truck.
Yeah.
So it's whaling is like a really big operation, and there are whales, you know, all around the world and off the coast of Australia included, and the whaling's been going on for a long time, and countries like Japan, for example, really have a big market for whale meat, and they hunt whales, and there are a lot of people who aren't happy about that because they say that whale populations are falling really fast, and if whaling keeps happening on the scale that it is, then we could be seeing whales becoming endangered and then, you know, potentially extinct, and we don't want to lose whales.
Yeah, because whales are actually, it's kind of a nice story really, because they were almost hunted to extinction, but then over the years they've recovered because the world kind of worked together to make it illegal, which is nice.
Yeah, so there are heaps of countries that look down on whaling and disapprove of whaling, but you know, there are countries like Japan who still see it as a really important part of their industry. And an example of some people in Australia who have been fighting whaling is a group called Sea Shepherd. You might have heard of them before, and we've got some vision of them here. Sea Shepherd are animal activists, and they go out into the oceans and they find these Japanese whaling ships and basically try and shut down the whaling operation to try and save these whales. But you were saying that doesn't happen anymore.
Sea Shepherd just announced that this whaling season they actually won't be going out because they didn't have enough funds. It's just really expensive to go out there on the open water. So yeah, they're not going to go out this year. I mean, who knows, next season they might again. But
right. Yeah, so that's kind of like grassroots activism, getting right out there. It's like going up to poachers, a group of animal activists going up to poachers and trying to stop them themselves rather than rangers. So it's a pretty that would also be a really dangerous thing to do, but these are people who really care about protecting whales.
It's a bit different too though, because it's not individual poachers, it's actually a government sponsored whaling program that Japan has, and the government of Japan says that they're actually catching the whales for science, and you're actually allowed to catch whales for scientific purposes. So they say that what they're doing isn't illegal. There's been some debate about that, whether they're doing it the right way or not. It's actually gone to international court and things like that, but it's a bit more complicated than poaching, which is just outright illegal.
Yeah, that's right.
And run by criminals rather than run by a government program.
Yeah, there is definitely a similarity there, like because it all comes down to wanting to protect species and stop species from becoming threatened and endangered, which is what the rangers are doing, and also what people who oppose whaling are doing. But yeah, it's a little bit of a different situation.
All right, let's see what else we have. Oh, here's a question from Sarah, good name, or Sarah. It might be Sarah. Sorry, Sarah or Sarah. Good name anyway.
We approve.
She wants to know, what is the most endangered species in Australia?
Good question. And I did a little bit of homework about this. So Australia has a whole bunch of endangered and threatened species, and we have, it depends what list you look at, but I found a list put together that said that we had 87 critically endangered species.
Wow.
And critically endangered basically means there's an extremely high risk of extinction in the wild, and it means that there can be less than 50 individual animals of that species left. So there's 87 of those in Australia that we know of, and one of them is, I just picked one that I liked, is called the woylie. I'd never heard of a woylie before.
That's a great name.
A brush-tailed bettong is also what it's known as, and we should have actually organised a picture of this, but it's.
Okay.
Daniel's onto it.
Looking for one.
It's basically like a little bilby-looking thing, like a little bush mouse or something like that. And
it's woylie cute.
It's woylie cute. Oh no. But they used to be all over Australia, like everywhere, and now they only occupy less than 1% of the Australian landscape. Just tiny little pockets of them are left all around the country, and it's from all different kinds of reasons, but there was apparently a big contagious. Oh, there we go. Oh, look how cute it is!
Okay, it is really cute.
It is. It's gorgeous. But unfortunately, it's had a bit of a rough time of things because there was a huge parasite infection that wiped a whole lot of them out, and also just the things that happen when we build. When we start clearing land. So
cats too, I reckon.
Yeah, introduced animals, foxes, and grazing animals, and anyway, the woylie is down to only a few left in the world, in the country. So hopefully.
So if you see a woylie, be nice to it.
Just protect it. And that's what happens when an animal is listed as endangered in Australia, or in lots of places in the world, it means that there's special laws that get introduced, legislation gets introduced to try and protect these animals. So it might be things like you can't kill this animal if you find it, or it can be introducing repopulation projects, which is basically like a zoo maybe would take a few of these animals in and try and breed them to increase the numbers and then release them into the wild to try and get the numbers back up. And that's been really successful in the past with lots of animals in Australia. I know of one case at the moment with a little turtle up near Coffs Harbour that was almost completely wiped out by a terrible disease in the Bellinger River, and there was only a few left, and Taronga Zoo has taken in the few left that they could find and has just been slowly breeding them, and it's a really long process. It might take another 10 years before they can start releasing them again.
Wow.
But it's been working, and so it's a great example of when you have just a few animals left and you can breed them up and then release them again. And
yeah, we actually had one in South Australia, a little lizard that they thought was extinct. It had been extinct for years and years and years until somebody actually found a dead one at the side of the road. It was like, oh, okay, so maybe they're not extinct. And then they found some live ones, and the zoo's been breeding them, and yeah, now they've got all these babies of this extinct lizard, which is pretty cool.
That's great. Yeah, so there are totally success stories. It's not always sad, but you know, there are certainly some sad stories, like the Tasmanian devil, which was Tasmanian tiger. Tasmanian tiger.
Yeah, devils are in trouble too.
Oh yeah,
they're still here.
They're still here, just. And that was wiped out, and
which is what Threatened Species Day commemorates. It's the
Really?
day. Yeah, it's the day that the last thylacine died.
Oh,
Yeah,
I did not know that.
See, there you go. So we're all learning something today.
There you go. Oh, that's a bit sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
But it's a good reminder, isn't it?
It is a good reminder. Yeah, that's right.
A good reminder that we need to protect our animals.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've got some really unique animals in Australia.
Yeah, because of the way that Australia is all by itself, broken off from the other continents, the way that the species have evolved over time means that we have some really unusual animals here that don't exist anywhere else in the world. So it's really important that we protect them because we can't find them anywhere else.
Absolutely. Now it looks like we've got a few more questions coming in via Twitter.
Great.
Let's have a look at this one. Stage 3 SPCC. What equipment do the rangers use?
Well, the rangers are trained to use a bunch of different things. One of them is a gun, which is the obvious one. And the reason that they need to have guns is because all the poachers and loggers carry guns as well. So it's really a self-defense thing. They learn how to use them in order to protect themselves. So they all carry one of those. Other things they use are things like cameras. They use trap cameras, which is when they set up a camera and they can take photos of the animals that come through. To keep an eye on the population numbers, and they also have a few different tools that they use to take down traps that they find. So often they won't find poachers, but they'll find the traps that the poachers have set for animals, and they have to dismantle these traps, and they're big traps that go when you step on them or go near them. So you have to be able to kind of dismantle them using some tools.
Actually, here's a question that's related to that. It says, what's the training program like for the rangers?
It's a really tough one, and if you watched the story, you would have seen them doing some of the training. They learn some really practical skills. Some of it is just fitness because they have to be really fit to be able to just traipse through the jungle all day. But other things are things like learning first aid, learning how to use their weapons to defend themselves, learning how to read certain types of maps to know where to look for certain things, how to respond to, how to use their kind of device, like alert devices, to communicate with each other, like their phones, things like that. And so it's really rigorous training. And when
like being a policeman, right?
Yeah, yeah, it kind of is. It's really full on, and they don't get to go home very often either. While they're training and while they're doing their ranger job, they might only go home once or twice a month. So it's really intense.
Yeah, there was actually a question about that here. Why can't they go to their families more often?
I think a lot of it would be just a geographical thing, like a distance thing. If you're off in the forest in Cambodia, you can't just pop home for lunch. It's a long way away. And so you kind of have to commit to going out there for a while. And when you do go home, it's just for a few days to kind of see your family, and then back out you go.
Well, I think we've got time for one last question. It's a lovely question from Merzat, and he wants to know, is there anything we can do to help the animals? I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong.
Totally, and that's just such a nice question to end on as well.
Isn't it? Yeah.
But what can you do to help the animals? Well, don't shoot them. But I think the best thing that you can do is look after animals when you find them, and don't disrupt them. Don't disrupt their habitats and their homes. When you go into nature, you want to leave it like you found it, and take your rubbish away with you. Take away anything that could hurt an animal. And it depends. It depends on which animals
what about
you're
shopping?
around.
What can you do when you're buying things to protect animals?
Yeah, there are lots of different things that people do. Some people just don't eat animals at all, but there are other things like certain certifications that you can get on the types of food that you buy. So for example, a lot of the fish that you buy in a can, you can buy it so that it's not what do they call it, dolphin friendly, so that you know that any of the nets that fish has been caught in haven't also caught dolphins by accident, which is unfortunately something that's really common as well. And there's lots of free range. You would have heard that before. Certain things.
Palm oil. Look for things like
Palm oil's a big one.
And also furniture, because a lot of this wood that's being cut down goes into furniture. So it's basically like looking at where the things you buy come from and what's in them, and whether that has hurt animals somewhere along the way. So it's a good thing to do.
It takes a bit of research, and it can be hard because things are done on such a big scale these days. It's hard to be able to really track down where everything comes from. But yeah, I think if you're interested in finding out about like what you can do to help animals, there are lots of places that you can go as well.
On the BTN website.
On the BTN website.
BTN website.
Always a good place to start. Now, that's about it for this week. Next week, we will be looking at Cassini. Cassini, which is totally one of my favourite topics.
Yeah, what's Cassini?
Cassini, NASA's spacecraft. It's been exploring Saturn for years. It took off in 1997, which is probably like before some of you guys were born.
Ooh.
It's been floating around out there in space, and we're going to find out all about it in next week's BTN.
Sounds fun.
So I hope you tune in. See ya.
See you guys.